So we're going to get started immediately. I just want to showcase a little bit about what this project that is hosting this event is. It's called NBSOIL, and it's all about exploring how nature-based solutions can help us improve and manage soils in a healthy manner. So we're focusing holistically on how do we manage land. So it includes both agricultural lands, forestry lands, urban lands, and industrial lands, and how we work with them to meet the EU Soil Health Mission objectives. We'll be sharing again at the website of the project if you're interested to learn more. And so far, we've learned a few things, how important it is to consider soil diversity methodologies and curriculums, because there's a huge need for practical learning. It's not about just learning and theoretical, but touching is really important. So what are we trying to do? We're trying to bring all the academic knowledge into practical advice, making sure that you have access to direct training, but also incorporating soft skills and co-creative methodologies, because as you know, this is a huge task. So making sure that we know how to work together to address the soil of the health of the soils is really important. So in doing so, we've been exploring how do we do it, and we came around the idea of creating a really comprehensive course that's called the NBSOIL Academy, which we are organizing around 4 advanced modules that should help you get knowledge about the soil and nature-based solutions for soil, how to facilitate soil health living labs, how to learn about and how to use digital tools for soil health, and then also how to improve your decision-making in business and policy. Today, obviously, we're talking about living labs, which means that we're focusing on how to facilitate soil health living labs. Just for anybody who might be interested and is not registered yet, you can register for free. This is a free course that we're offering, and you can actually already access the soil and NBSOIL solution, NBS solutions. That whole module, 3 levels, is already up and going. Module 2, we already have all the first and second levels, which are all about co-creating, working co-creatively and explaining what a living lab is. And the third part, which is all about tools to make it happen, is going to be released next week. So really encourage you to come. Just a short intro about what a living lab is, so that we can sort of like have an idea before we get into the conversation. Living labs is one methodology. It's one way of working with people to make a co-creative process work. Co-creation is really complicated in that you bring so much knowledge and so many backgrounds into the same space, trying to reach a shared goal. So you need to think about how to make it right. Living labs are a great way to make it happen, but the other side of the equation is that you need to put a lot of thinking into them and a fair amount of effort. So what are they? They're basically ecosystem. You basically create an ecosystem. You create a group of people coming together around a particular space. That happens in real life. So that's the trick. You're engaging with people in real life, using iterative feedback, which is a fancy way of saying you're getting feedback and adjusting the process as it goes to make sure that you're responding to the needs of the users. You do it in a co-creative way. So you bring lots of different people with different backgrounds to the table to be able to create comprehensive solutions and to create, and this is really important, sustainable impact. Sustainable as in that it can last through the years, and sustainable as in that it creates value for the people and the place. You also have the great opportunity to test your ideas or test your pilots in a real life environment and adjust them before they're out to market or out scaling. So it's a great way just to test ideas with people who will use them in real life, bringing other people's knowledge, bringing a lot of knowledge and assets and networks to the table. It's still super vague to talk about it like that. So here's a little bit about what you should consider when doing it. Think of a real challenge. You're going to want to address a real challenge. You're going to want to bring lots of people with diverse backgrounds to the table. You want to make to find the tools to make everyone work together around the table in an effective manner. And really importantly, you want to make sure that power is shared and responsibility is shared. This is a method that encourages you to share and have a horizontal way of working rather than someone just giving instructions and everybody following them. Here are some of the characteristics that we've mentioned a little bit before. All this, just to mention, is based on the fantastic NetTunes project series of webinars, which we will share because you might want to explore them. And also on the work that I2Connect, another project that has focused a lot on creating tools for co-creation, have developed. So again, let's go back just to hammer this idea. It has to be in real life. It has to be customized to the needs of your local situation. It should put the user at the heart of the whole process. You should bring different learning styles and different knowledges to the table. You should strengthen the relationships within that network. Make sure to share the skills and the resources, and make sure that everyone's a part of the process. A very confusing thing, and this is the last that I'm going to be speaking before I pass it to our experts here, is that when you speak about Living Lab, you speak about 3 levels. A first level, which is kind of bigger, which is where the core group has met. And this is when we talk about the Living Lab on this level, what we mean is basically where the governance is, where the big decisions are made, where the strategic vision is. But you also have the Living Lab experimentation sites. You're going to see this in a real life example. It's going to make so much sense. So you might be talking about Living Lab and thinking of this place where we're testing one idea, this place where we're testing this and other idea, this place where we're testing another idea. So 3 smaller places, but they all respond and are coordinated by this bigger concept. This is a very good image, but I find it easier to think about it like this. The big idea Living Lab is where the central decisions are made, where the governance and business plans are developed. And then you have like mini Living Labs, or more effectively trials, that are hanging from this central space and that you can test different ideas. I think I've spoken enough, and it might still be quite hazy for you. So what I'm going to do is shut up and let the experts, those who have actually done it in the flesh, speak about it. And to do that, I'm stopping the sharing now. And I would like to invite Laura and Elio to the fore, and to use a really good example, a fantastic example, which again, you're going to get a lot of information about, which is what happened in Torino, in the neighborhood of Mirafiori Sud, which created this fantastic living lab, also focusing on nature-based solutions for soil health, and that allowed the academics and the community and the municipality to come together to work. So, Laura, would you like to take over and explain a little bit about it? And again, yes. Any questions, feel free to keep on putting them.
Thank you so much. I hope I'm sharing my slide.
You are, we can see them perfectly.
Perfect. So I'm Laura Ribotta. I work for the City of Torino. I work in the Department for European Funds, and I'm in charge of the environmental European projects. And I'm here today to talk about a proGIreg project that is closed now. It was a project of 5.5 years. Because of COVID also, we had some extension. And at the beginning of this project, we decided to define a different type of nature-based solution. And so we defined 8 types of nature-based solution. And in Torino, that was a front-runner city, we tried to do action for 7 of them. So I will not explain everything today, but this is the map of the area in Torino, Mirafiori South. So in the south of the city, a peripheral area. And all the yellow dots is an action, a temporary action or a permanent action with a community all around. And here in the presentation, there's also a lot of links and you can go through more. There is also a WebGIS map if you want after my presentation, but I will go very fast on this, but because today is more about the system of a living lab. And in this picture, you can see in the inner part what were the partners of the project. And in the second belt, in a way, who were involved during the project, for example, like third parties or like a subcontractor or like just stakeholders. So a very complex system. And as a partner, we had association, we had private enterprises, we had 2 different university, a research center. So it was really a richness, but sometimes it was also a mess, a mess of conflict and a mess of point of view. But I think it was the most important learning environment of my working life, because really I learned during those years a lot of things and also some psychology in a way. And it was very, very interesting. And from starting from there, we built really a community about the thinking of nature-based solution in Torino. And I'm going through some practical example of the action, and this is about soil. We called it new soil. You know, nature-based solutions are starting from a problem because they are solutions. So what was the problem here? The city of Torino, every time that has to build up a new park in the city, needs fertile soil. Usually in the site, there is no fertile soil. Sometimes we have problems of contamination and so on. So usually the city take this fertile soil from countryside. So and this is not an ecological and economical good choice. And so we started from this problem, and we tried to use an artificial soil, starting from the excavation soil in the city, and adding new component, studying this new artificial soil, understanding if it can be a substitute of normal agricultural soil. And we added zeolites, but also compost from our organic waste, but also biostimulants. And in this process, we involved, for example, enterprises like Dual, that was about the soil excavation and regeneration, but also Acea for the production of compost, and CCS from mycorrhizae fungi. And all those enterprises were in a way coordinated by Environment Park, that is a research center, but all the monitoring and also the choice for the plants and so on was conducted by the University of Torino. And here you can see a map of the site, and in the bigger part we put this new soil and the plants, and in a part we put just the same plants without new soil to test the behavior of those plants during those years. And what were the results from our point of view? Really, the new soil can be used like a substitute of agricultural soil. The private enterprise, Dual SRL, now is registering the name of the product. So during the project, they developed, in a way, a product for commercial use. And it was also a name of the call, of the European call. And during this work, 2 different entrepreneurs met, and they decided to build up a new enterprise, Dual Green, And now they are not only dealing with soil, but also with the greenlands, with the pollination, with the biodiversity, and so on. And the university is continuing also now to test the soil, but I will let the word to Elio. And the new soil site now is an integrated part of the park in the city. So Elio, if you want to comment those slides.
Yes, thank you, Laura, and hi to everyone. As Laura said, we are, as the university, we were involved in the project with the Department of Agricultural Sciences and the Department of Chemistry. And I work in the soil chemistry lab, and we belong to the agricultural department of the university, and we are still working on it, studying it and studying the evolution of these materials. And what we learned was, I will start from the last one, the last point, because soil as a road much more needs than we thought. So at first we thought to study it by more simple ways. By then we started to deep analyze all the parameters, and we've seen that, for example, the weed management or the choice of the species conditioned the evolution of the soil, because these materials are changing much faster than we thought and than the natural ones. For example, we had a problem with the plants. You can see that due to drought, extreme drought that we had in 2022 in Italy, that many weeds die, and the technosol compacted much more than the natural soil, and this had an effect on plant growth. Then we started working on the microbiota, and we have seen that the microbial communities were massively impacted from these amendments that we used. And we had much differences, much changes within the area and the soil, much more than we thought at first. But as Laura said, for example, during this drought, we have seen that technosols were much more effective in guaranteeing the survival of the planted species than the natural soil. For example, in the natural soil, one of the species, the Spirea, died. All the plants died in the natural soil 100%, while only the 40% of them died in the technosoil. So they were advantages also within the area. And we learned that this type of materials, the excavated soil, had very different compositions. And so this idea should vary depending on the area. From these lessons and from this idea, we started to work on, for example, on different experiments, because the Living Labs stopped. Thank you. But we started a new project building on what we learned in this site. For example, we are working on new parks and new recipes for urban gardening. And we started also working on construction and demolition waste. It is, at first, I won't see in this way, but now after these 5 years, we've seen that it seems a more dirty ingredient, the construction and demolition waste, but due to the fact that the companies are selecting it and mixing many different wasting, at the end this waste is more stable than the natural soil. And we started new experiments on new soils, technosoils, technosoils for urban regeneration. And this, for example, this was an old school that was destroyed, and then a new park was built on the same area. So the ceiling and building a new space using the same wastes of the demolitions or other ideas. So the Living Lab also for us was a way to work, to learn, and to work with the associations and peoples, and have new ideas that we hadn't by working by ourselves. So.
Thank you, Elio. And I can go ahead with other little examples. And so, for example, one other action about vegetable gardens was Orti Generali. That is, it started with proGIreg, and it was an abandoned area, and an association take this area in concession, and they started those vegetable gardens, and now there are 160 gardens, but they are expanding with other 100, and they have more than 1,000 people in waiting lists to have a vegetable garden. They created really a community, also a bar and restaurant, also vegetable community gardens for association schools and vulnerable people. And they won also an award for the landscape. And so it's really a successful action. And in this case, we started with the money from the European project, but the association that now became a social enterprise, so they grow up also their business case and business model. It's in their hands in collaboration with the city, and it's in a way a foster parent for this action. And so are really important learning things that we had from this Living Lab is that when you do an action, you have to think from the beginning to have a foster parent for the action, so someone who can take care of it after the project, during and after the project. Another place is this one that we call Spazio Wow. It's a big building, not in a good shape, but it has a lot of space all around the courtyard. So we decided to use it, for example, to start to use it and think after that what to do with the building. And we built up some gardening boxes, but also an apiary, but also we did a piece of green roof, and some associations started to use it. And we signed, the city signed a pact of collaboration with them. We had another edition of this pact of collaboration with other association, and we are going on to use more and more spaces also in the building, so putting some money for the refurbishment of it. And it's also now really an active place. And but there's something also that didn't work so well, and it's part of an innovation project, and it's part of a Living Lab. And so, for example, the green corridor, we thought this type of green corridor with the wild flowers for pollinators, we did it with citizens and so on, but also the communication and co-creation activities were stopped by COVID. And at the end, we had a lot of hurry to do works and to finish the project, to follow the timing of the European project. And there were also 2 years or really drought, like Elio said. So we hadn't water, and a lot of plants died. And so it also now not so a successful action, and we have to restart with the citizens this place, also thinking that maybe in the future we will have less water also in Torino, and we are not used to it, but it's climate change. And another example is about green walls. We did 2 green walls, one in a school and one in a homeless shelter. And they are quite a technological thing. So you have to be trained to maintain them. And so we started with a company that did the first 2 years the maintenance. And we hoped that the school and the cooperative who managed the shelter at the end of those 2 years will be ready to take care of it. But we understood during the project that it was not like that. So we found new money to do another other 2 years of maintenance, but with the obligation for people that are in the school and in the shelter to understand how to manage after those 2 years, doing also some training with the company. And now they are managing by themselves. They found a solution, and we hope that the green walls will be good. But it was also not so easy to explain and to find a solution. And this is my intervention, and I can interrupt the slide.
Thank you so much, Laura and Elio. I was like, I turned on the camera because I was really excited, and I thought it was really nice sometimes to see when you're talking that people are really excited about it. You touch on so many things that kind of go to what a living lab is. And I think that they're all anchored on this idea that living labs actually have to happen in real life, and that you might have the most amazing plans, and then they get in touch with reality and things go pear-shaped. So I thought that was really interesting. I absolutely love some of the things that you said around bringing the community together, and the fact that it's quite challenging, because sometimes we have this amazing idea that we think everybody's going to understand it. Why people are coming from different places, that can be a challenge. And I think what I really loved as well was what both Laura and Elio mentioned around sort of like getting inspiration from the doing and also from the communities, things that you might not have thought about, and all of a sudden in the process they popped up. And so it gives a new lease of life to the idea that you're developing, and it helps it evolve into the next stage. But rather than me talking about the things that I can interesting, we're going to open the space for questions in a second, but I would like to use about 15 minutes to explore a little bit more in depth the whole process that you went through, how the process of creating a living lab went. So I think my first question, and I think I'm going to start with Laura, is just to try to understand the origin of the process. So you have an idea. How do you make it happen? How do you bring the people together? Did someone take the idea and started bringing people together, or was it like an organic thing? How did you fine-tune the ideas to make it happen? A little bit about that early stage where you're like, I have this bulb moment. Now, how do I bring the people together that I need to make it happen? And how do I shape it? So, Laura, I know it's a big question.
Yeah.
But little pieces that you feel are relevant.
In this case, our director decided to respond to this European call, and it was the first time that we saw the definition nature-based solution. So the first internal question was, what's this nature-based solution? So we called everybody in the city, in the different departments, all around a table, a big table, to talk about this. What for you, this nature-based solution? You have some cases, for example, starting from the green department, environmental department, and so understanding with them what is it. And some of them came out with some idea. For example, for Orti Generali, this association were asking for the land, and they are in the situation to have this land rented from the city. So they were ready to go in a way, and they had ideas. For example, the New Soil Action, a colleague of mine did some tests during a construction site before in a park, and so he had this idea. He discussed this with this enterprise that were very open to experiment, and it's not so usual in this type of enterprise also. And so the first circle was in the city. The second circle was with association or enterprises or universities that were working with someone of us around this type of topic. And we discussed a lot with different meetings, and we try to put a list of possible actions. And we decided to do little actions and not so big. And because it was our choice, not the choice of Dortmund or Zagreb, that were the other front runner city. They decided to do little less action, more with more money. And I saw also a question about money, that in this case it was just money from the European project, and we have also some information more, maybe Anna can share with you about all the action, and there is also the budget for all the action, but it's all on the website of proGIreg, proGIreg.eu. And so you can find really for each action, also for the other city, how much money, what was the problem, what was the solution, if there were the solution, because sometimes, and we started like that.
I love that you bring that up. Sometimes you think there's a solution and there's no solution. And that in itself is super valuable to learn. It's like, this is not the way that we need to go. We need to find other angle or another way of doing it. So no solution sometimes is a good solution. I love the fact that you brought people to the table and you started exploring their networks and bringing them together. I think that's a really good top tip for everyone. Sometimes we think we need to go out there and explore in ways that are really difficult. Just start with what's not known, and then those things create little arms everywhere. You'll be happy to know that there's a tool that we've included in the Academy to do it if you're interested, but that sounds amazing. Just sort of like following on that, I think that a really good question that keeps on popping up, and it's because it's such a user-centric thing. You probably have lots of users, like I'm thinking Elio probably is a user of the Living Lab in some ways, but the communities are users as well. Is there any way of creating trust that you found especially effective, or is it something that just develops as the process evolves and they get involved? Did you see any particular path to creating that trust that allows you to work and move forward? And it can be a question for either of you. I'm going to start with Laura, but then Elio.
Okay. I think you need in this situation someone that is a community manager in a way, and I was that. I was not, I didn't think at the beginning to be that, but at the end I was, and I was the link for everyone. So in a way, I listened a lot their needs, and trying to find the compromise, because you have to find a compromise between the objective of the enterprise and the university. They have time and interest very, very different. Sometimes some fight. There was also some fight not with Elio, but with the previous professor. No, but I'm joking. But yeah. No, but it's normal to have conflict, because you have different interests, you have different needs, and you need a person in the middle. And this person in the middle, in a way, it was the city, because the city was the main partner of the project, and everyone has to deal with the city. And so in a way it was also the right position in the middle, and not a power position, but a position of for discussing and to be there and to listen people. It was my strategy, and I think it works.
You're just a case study for all these things. Everything that you're saying, I'm like, co-creation at its finest, with a nice facilitator in the middle. Elio, it'd be interesting to hear your experience from, I'm not sure if user is the right concept, but as a partner within this whole thing, how easy or how hard is it when you're a university, for example, and you're used to doing things one way, to all of a sudden see yourself in a living lab where you're actually having to balance your interests and your needs and your background and your way of doing things with people from, like, for example, I'm thinking a community or an enterprise that have completely different ways of doing things?
So yeah, as already Laura had said, we were at first much more than the university with a capital U. So we were from one side and saying things, and I wasn't. But by then, I think with the experience of the Living Labs, we started to work more with the other associations and people. So at first it was very difficult from us. I wasn't in charge in that period as I was a postdoc, but that was the main problem. So we weren't used to do such things, and we still aren't used. So we started to do something, but I said it also, for me, it's very difficult to change the approach in a way. So also if is not so much years that for example, I'm working in university, but it's something completely different to all the other things that we do in research. So you should change your way to do things. So it's challenging, but with this project we also started to do so, and I think it was the same for the other researchers. There were some professors that were more acquainted to do things with people and with citizen science, for example. That is a different thing, but it's the way to do is similar. But yeah, with this we started, and we have seen the possibilities, and as Laura said, the problems and the challenges that they are. So
I think that's such an important point, and for anybody who's suffering through the translation aspect in a way, because we think of translation about speaking different languages. But in a way, when you're talking an academic language and an authority language and a community language, it's literally different meanings for the same word sometimes. So I think that just probably that's an important thing to be aware of. Sometimes there's not much you can do, but if you're aware, you can at least be like, okay, maybe that means something different. And it helps reduce that conflict period. Having said that, I just wanted to pick up on what Laura said in terms of conflict is not necessarily bad. It's just a thing. It's facing opinions, and beware of having a project where you don't have those crashes. Ideally, they're not bad. They're actually just different perspectives coming together, because usually that means that people feel comfortable to explain their ideas and not agree and be happy to talk. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually probably a good thing, but poor Laura has to deal with it. So just be aware that that's something. I'm seeing some of the questions here in the chat, and I think it's really interesting because it very much relates. I was going to ask you things about like governance and all that, but I think we can leave it for later if we have time, because this is a really important question. Especially nowadays, we see that living labs are being funded because they're a great idea, But once it finishes, you have this community that has gained momentum, this idea that has gained momentum, and all of a sudden funding ends. What do you do? And I think this relates a little bit with the strategy that you mentioned about having a clear foster parent from the very beginning of the thing, maybe even approaching learning labs as incubators of great ideas. But it would be interesting to understand, how did you come up with the notion of having a foster parent, or if it's something that you learned as you were doing and all of a sudden you were like, oh my God, we need a plan B because funding is about to finish. And how did the different actors sort of like approach this? Just for everyone's benefit as well, there's a really good article about the afterlife of this project that I'll share with you. But it would be great to hear it from sort of like the person that lived it. So Laura, Elio, how was that process of thinking of the afterlife?
Yes, we had clear at the beginning that we need something to continue in the action after the project. It was a risk, a big risk, and we knew it. But it was not so clear, this foster parent situation, but it was clear and clear during the process. And we tried different strategy for each action. So, for example, the action started from the community foundation of Mirafiori, that was a partner. It was quite easy because they started, they did it, so they are in charge for them. And but for example, for the green walls, it was not so easy, and so I said it was not so easy to find a way to maintain those technological things, and it was not so clear also at the beginning if it was so easy or not to maintain for normal people this type of technological things, and it's not so easy at the end. So you need a basic training, and at the beginning the school said, okay, but you put it in my school and you have to maintain. And okay, but the project will finish and I will try it. But and so at the end they are funding, they now have some funds for this. They decided to use some funds for the maintaining of the green wall, and for the shelter for homeless. We have a contract for the maintenance and of the managing of this shelter, because it's our property, but it's maintained and conducted by a cooperative. And in the new contract, we put the maintaining of the green wall in the contract. So we take in count also this. And they agree. They agree on this, sure. And so, and for Orti Generali, it was easy also because this big place with vegetable gardens, because the association started with the idea, so they are from the beginning the foster parents, and it is a big action, and we tried with them to find new funds for them, and for us to continue this action that is a new offer for our citizens. It's a new public service in a way, so we want to protect more and more this action. And after proGIreg, we won with them Fusilli project that finished in December. It was about food. And we are starting now, the 1st of January, we started Climagen, that is a new project also with them, but more on heritage and art connected to nature-based solutions. So the way is to find new funds, but also to let those association and foster parents of each action to find by themselves a new way to continue it.
Thank you. That sounds really interesting in terms of thinking of each of the trials as sort of like a mini structure that needs to continue living. And just to read in between the lines, it feels like you found for each of them a particular, almost like a value proposition, which again is something that if you go to the course, there's a whole tool about creating a business plan for either the big living lab or the smaller ones, but just thinking of what makes this unique, that you can find more funding or make a case to the community of why to keep it going. And I'm assuming, Elio, that that's what happened, that there's you're continuing with at least some pieces of the puzzle, still working on the space. So how did that happen from, again, from one of the people on the ground's kind of perspective?
Yeah.
Was it just that you found funding for something in particular, or?
No, in this case, we didn't have funding for continuing, so we are trying to fund it without money. So we are just analyzing and sampling and doing with other money. And so for the other experiments are funded from also 2-3 years projects. So let's see, we don't have such possibilities now to continue. One is a park, so normally the city, for example, should continue to keep it, and while the others we still don't have any funding. So at least we have some our hands, and we will try to do it like this.
At least it was interesting enough for you that you continue. That's really good news, that sometimes you just continue with one of the partners. That's really interesting. We don't have that much time, and there were a few technical questions I want to answer at the end. But before we go into the technical questions about the soil, which will come, don't worry. In 5 minutes, it would be amazing for me to understand, like, if you were to summarize the lesson learned and why do you think living labs work? I mean, I think, Laura, you mentioned at the very beginning quite well, saying that it was sort of like one of the most rewarding learning experiences. But how would you summarize the potential of living labs, I guess, to create change on the ground or to test ideas or whatever you want to say with your last minutes?
I think growing an ecosystem in the city about nature-based solution in this case, but you can do living labs about what you want. It's really what can pay you back because at the end you can have new idea, new working group, new for example, different partners after proGIreg decided to work together and go ahead with other projects in the city. And for the city, it's a value. And so this big community about nature-based solution, it's something valuable. But we have also living labs about technology or other things. And for example, at the end this year, we are iCapital in Europe for this ecosystem that we are growing and growing. So
that's fantastic. Elio, how about for the university? Because you said that it's a very different way of doing things. What's the value for you getting involved or seeing it happen? Or what do you like and what do you hate about a living lab?
No, yeah, it's as Laura said, is to have new connections and work with new people, and in some cases, it's not always. For example, the association and people working in association with association is much more motivated to do a change, much more than, for example, researchers that just they work on it. So it's different from something that has a strong motivation to change something very small, maybe, but that could be connected from the living lab to bigger questions and bigger projects. So just to make connection and build this community, as Laura said, also for university. Although the university is not still we are not still evaluated for that, because, as you know, and I don't know, the people, we are evaluated just on the scientific output. So it's something that we should do, but it's something that we do more and I don't know how to say it in a polite way.
You can just leave it hanging because I think that will read in the lines, but I totally agree. It's sort of like, it's one of those things, and it goes back to a little bit what Beth was saying. It's such a new thing that finding that community that helps you identify the impact so that you can make your case. It's in this early stages. So for big organizations that are used to doing things in a particular way, it might be a challenge, but there are amazing examples like this one where you can see the value and hear from the users and hear from the municipality and different people. And it's really exciting to see that there's a shared understanding of the value. Elio and Laura, I'm going to attack you with two practical questions that came up, and I know myself that sometimes I hate it when I don't get an answer. So the first question that I saw, and I'm not sure which of you could understand it, is where did the additives for the soil came from for the project? And I think that's probably more of an Elio question because it came when you were...
It's not so difficult answer because we had for partners also Environment Park, and Environment Park is a research center but also a booster for startups and enterprises. It's private and public owned, and they propose from the beginning those type of additives starting from some enterprise that work with them. And so the compost and also the mycorrhizae came from two different enterprises that were collaborating with the Environment Park. So they were subcontractors of Environment Park. But all these things were discussed a lot with the university. And so we decided what how much of them and so on and when and all together. But the first proposal came from Environment Park.
That sounds fantastic. And the second technical question was whether you tried to manage the soil contamination with nature-based solutions like in situ phytoremediation with soil amendments to improve the soil without excavating, or did you go for excavating?
We used just soil without contamination. So the new soil was made by selected soil, tested soil before to use it, so without contamination. And we had also in our partnership the environmental agency, regional agency for that, because we wanted to be sure that all the procedure were okay also with them. And so we tested and we did the procedure like they said. And so in this case, we didn't approach the problem of contamination.
Fantastic.
We came through, but just to add, for example, the first idea where to put the control soil was a soil very near to this experiment. We analyzed it and it was contaminated. So we just changed the control area because it wasn't a control. So it was something that some year before, we don't know how and when and why, contaminated, changed the soil and added some contaminants. So that's something. But at least in Italy, as Laura said, we are not allowed to move a soil if it is contaminated. So you should open a much more complex path to the contamination. So phytoremediation wasn't in the idea. It is in NBSOIL. In NBSOIL, we have an experiment on phytoremediation.
You can learn more about it in the website that we're getting. We literally have 2 minutes left, but I just wanted to thank you both for sharing all this. Again, there's a lot of information that's out there that we will share from a more technical perspective, but just hearing from you what worked, what didn't work, how it evolved, and the benefits to different actors is always amazing. And an hour is really hard to do, but you did an amazing job. So thank you. Thank you so much for that. just again, to remind everyone who's here who wants to explore more what a living lab is or what co-creation is and how to make it happen, the Academy has a whole module on that. So you can explore what a living lab is step by step. And we'll also share some of the fantastic work that's being done by other projects like proSOIL, by Soil Up, by lots of other projects that are exploring the living labs as a baseline to do it. Beth, in answer to your question about whether there's a community, there's not a community yet, but we can create one through using the people that are participating in the living lab, and I'll find out if there's something more specific to where you're at. I'm not sure that we have an answer. But with 1 minute to go, just say thank you again. Thank you so much for sharing it and bringing it to life, because again, sometimes it can be a bit daunting because it's so big doing a living lab, and seeing you, Laura, be like, we did it, it worked, it was amazing. Some things worked, some things didn't. And making it look like a lot of work, but a lot of rewarding work, I think it's very inspiring. And Elio, the fact that you're slowly changing old ways of doing things and bringing this new way into the university, that makes my heart sing. So thank you very much. So thank you, speakers. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As I mentioned, everything will be recorded. And if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to us at any point. But thank you, Laura. Thank you, Elio. Thank you, everyone. And see you soon, hopefully in Moodle. Bye.